You are about to enter a realm of infinite creativity, a realm where you decide the outcome of the story. Welcome to Ace Role Playing Games. How's that for a good dramatic introduction? Welcome to Ace Role Playing Games. I'm Mason Emerson, your host and founder and sponsor of the Ace Role Playing Games Club systems. So, welcome to our official channel. This channel, I hope, will outlast me, and when I'm dead and gone, it'll still be here, and you'll still be able to learn a little bit about the Savage Worlds role-playing game as it existed in 2023, which this year is the 20th anniversary of this role-playing game system, and that's pretty awesome, because I have a copy from 2003, and that's pretty cool. But I tell you, they have worked really hard over the last several iterations of it to make it even better and flow even better. And yeah, so if you have the money and your parents can help you do so, get ready, because in the next week or so, they're going to be doing a Kickstarter for the 20th anniversary special edition, which will have all of the errata over the previous 4 printings. Yeah, that's right. They've had 4 printings of the hardback book. And so this will be the same book, but better and corrected and updated. And on top of that, they're going to be doing something really cool. See, when I got back into Savage Worlds, it was with Deluxe Edition back in like 2017. And it was right toward the tail end of Deluxe. But what happened was they had, at the time, a $10 paperback that you could buy that had all the contents in it. Just had I didn't even realize they had a hardback book. And so for $10, you could get the whole Savage Worlds core rules system. And that was really cool. I bought it on Amazon. It was before I became friends with the people at Pinnacle. So I'm just saying, this is an awesome opportunity for you to be able to get in, like, kind of almost on a first printing in a lot of ways. But this is a special 20th anniversary version. And to go along with that one that I mentioned earlier, the $10 one, they're going to be putting out players books. They're only $20. They're also going to be full color, glossy, have 5 different collectible covers, which I'm going to buy all 5, just at least one copy of each. But they're going to have really cool different covers, and like one shows Red as a samurai mistress lady, and she's standing in a cherry blossom garden with her sword drawn. She looks really cool. And if for those of you who haven't read the book yet, Red and Gabe are the 2 recurring us characters that are in the book, and they show us how to interact with the game master, who's kind of actually more us because we're actually the game masters here. Regardless, it's going to be fun. So this is the series on the situational rules, and I've been just trying to work my way through them to kind of give you an idea of things that might come up in your games. But I'm trying to do it in such a way now that I'm going to be involving a scenario in which you might use that rule. So let's get into this, and welcome for those of you who are new. And yeah, I know all the other videos are like ring the bell and subscribe. I'm going to try and avoid doing that much because I know I just did it, but that's not the point. The point is I don't do it too often, because if you're here, you're here. And if you're sharing this, you're sharing this. And I really appreciate that, because this is our place for us. This is our place where we can talk and have great ideas, and we can work at becoming better as game masters and as just people in general. So let's start this session about situational rules talking about non-lethal damage. Now, to me, it kind of surprises me in a lot of, like, especially super heroic situations and stuff like that more people don't pay attention to this one, because we're heroes. I mean, sometimes we're anti-heroes and sometimes we're even the villains. But sometimes your character wants to be the good guy and do non-lethal damage, except against those foul, evil things that would corrupt mankind. Like, if you're doing a high fantasy, like the greenskins and the bugbears, and and you're playing a paladin. So that's where you'd be like, die, foul beings. Otherwise, maybe you're the rogue and you just want to knock him out so you can steal his treasure. So you do non-lethal damage on him. So what you do when you do that, you basically tell the game master, or they tell you, I'm doing non-lethal damage here, and they're going to incapacitate them. So they've done 3 wounds, and now they're going to incapacitate them. or and when they're knocked incapacitated, they're knocked out for 1d6 hours instead of dying or going incapacitated and bleeding out or something like that. Now you can do it with an edged weapon because people talk, and this is a very true thing because I've talked to you about how I use and I know how to use swords and things like that. And so you see sometimes if this is the edge of the sword that you cut with, chop, then this would be the flat of the sword. And you can smack people with that. But you're going to be doing so at a -1 because the blade is designed to chop or slice. It's not designed to smack and do non-lethal damage. Sword, knife, well, knife comes from the tool, and even swords come from tools. I mean, if you're going to go back and play a Stone Age game, for example, you might have a chipped flint knife, not even a polished flint knife, just a chipped flint knife that you're using for cutting like food or leather, or you're using it to cut your enemies. So that would be an example of how you would have a edged weapon that didn't start out as a weapon, but became one. Well, anyway, and then, basically somebody took that chipped flint edge or something that had an edge on both sides, and that they stuck it on the end of a stick, and that's how they made the spear, which went pretty much from Stone Age times all the way through gunpowder. So it was around for thousands of years. And, I'm just going to take a little aside here and talk about swords. Swords are cool. I will admit, swords are pretty darn cool. And they were very much made cool by the propaganda, if you will, of the people in the times that used them. The sword was seen as a gentlemanly art or as a high class thing. But it's been proven, and I can't exactly cite the research on this, so I'm gonna have to find some research on this. But there have been videos I've seen that talk about proofs where a person who has been marginally trained in a spear can actually stand their own ground against somebody who has a sword. So you could take a whole bunch of spears, which are just sticks with pokies on the end, and give those to peasant farmers, and they were able to stand their ground against knights. And that's historically proven. So just remember that, especially if you're working with spears have reach. We'll get to reach later, but spears have reach. So the guy with the sword can't even get in on them. But that's a little side note on history of weapons and warfare, so we're going to go ahead and just move on from there. So with non-lethal damage, you treat the wounds exactly like lethal wounds. And so it's easier to render an extra unconscious than it is a wild card. And in most genres heroes can take multiple punches before they go down. But especially like in just games where there's mooks, really low level fighters, they should be able to be knocked out just almost immediately. Now, if you have the drop and you're doing non-lethal damage, you get all the +4s and everything, but you declare it non-lethal damage, and that's kind of how you get that classic story trope, and especially in detective fiction, of getting sapped in the back of the head with a blackjack. So let's give an example of non-lethal damage. Well, I've kind of given several here, but non-lethal damage would be the knight realizing that questioning his foe over killing his foe will be more useful in the long run. So he takes his sword and he comes down and he turns the blade and he smacks him on the side of the head. They've already been shaken. So he smacks him on the side of the head and knocks him out. So those are kind of examples of knockout kind of things. Now, you may have been wondering what I was doing in my video or in the image when I was doing that before. Here's what I was doing. I was talking about the offhand. Most people in this world are right-handed. But in Savage Worlds, you can be right-handed or left-handed. It doesn't matter. You've got a hand and you're offhand. Now, I'm more or less ambidextrous. I can write in cursive both hands, which if you don't know how to write in cursive, there's ways of learn how to write in cursive. It's an important thing. It is a good skill to have. Anyway, so there are your hand and your offhand usually. And there is an edge called ambidextrous, which means that you wouldn't have an offhand. However, if you're looking to make somebody who fights with 2 knives or 2 swords, somebody who shoots 2 guns, there are other edges you should take first. Like, for example, if I'm going to be a double-handed gunslinger, wah wah, boom boom. Let's talk mechanically how that works. A gunslinger, first of all, his right hand, in this case, is going to be his dominant hand. That's going to be his main shooting hand. So if he shoots with that hand, then it's just a single shot and he rolls his shooting die. However, if he shoots with his left hand right after, if you don't have an edge to counter that, it's going to be -2 to both attacks because it's a multi-action. And on top of that, so this has got a -2 on the. So this first one's got the -2. Second one's got a -2, and being as it's an offhand, it's got an additional -2. So let's begin to solve this problem for our gunslinger. We're going to give him Two Gun Kid. Two Gun Kid is an edge that negates the -2 penalty for the multi-attack. So now it's no penalty, -2 penalty for offhand. Then at my next advance, I'm going to have my character have been working at it and training at it and realize, hey, I am ambidextrous. So now we have no penalty for the right hand and no penalty for the left hand. So you can do 2 attacks, boom, boom, and have no penalties for it. Because if you go the ambidextrous first and then the Two Gun Kid route, then you're going to have that -2 penalty to the first shot and the second shot longer. So that's kind of how that works for shooting offhand. So that's why it's kind of smart to use the skills and the edges of Savage Worlds in order to actually make it work better. So let's talk also about oh yes, and that's one more note that it does make here. Offhand weapons don't add to your hero's parry unless she's ambidextrous. If she's ambidextrous, the fighting for the right hand and the fighting for the left hand give equal parry. So let's talk about going prone. Prone is actually a useful and important thing because, like many people who've been in the military have told me, which for reasons I couldn't join the military and I wish I could have. I had thought of nothing else growing up as a child, but things changed. So anyway, but anybody in the military will tell you, when you go, if the bullets start flying, drop to the deck or hit the deck. You just drop straight down and get as flat as you can. And as long as they're not in melee range with you, they have a -4 penalty to hit you. That's a pretty darn good cover. And it does not stack with cover. So, and it also subtracts 4 points of damage from area effects, so grenades and stuff if you're hugging the ground. But it does cost 2 parts of your movement to stand back up. So it takes a little bit of an effort to stand back up. But if you're in the middle of a field, standing up, shooting your rifle, bam, bam, and then dropping back down prone, or stand up, shoot, boom, then dropping prone again, that's a good way of managing your movement. And then maybe move a little bit forward on the ground. Yeah, it's going to be rough terrain, but you're going to be getting to safer cover but sooner and better. So you use the best cover that you have available. If you are caught in melee, your parry is reduced by 2, and you've got to subtract 2 from your fighting rolls. So being on the ground when somebody's in melee range does not help you. But if they're in melee range and they're shooting at you, they do have to hit your parry and not just a regular to hit roll. However, with your parry -2, it probably subtracted you down to a 4 anyway. So those are just some things to think about. So again, if the bullets start flying, hit the deck. Just go prone. Somebody pulls out a AK-47, drop. Unless they have an angle on you. As a game master, we're going to be telling them they get a -4 penalty to shoot at you. So, and remember to use some of these tactics against your players through their enemies. Use these tactics. Show them by example how an enemy dropping prone becomes really hard to hit. Because if they're just being shot at regular, that target number's gone up to an 8 now. And would be a normal hit. Now it's a hit with a raise. So let's talk about being pushed or pushing. And sometimes you want to knock them out of position, prone, or even into like a fire or some other deadly hazard. It's an opposed strength roll. And if the attacker is successful, she pushes the foe back up to 1 inch or 2 yards. So an inch is 2 yards. So therefore, if you think about it, you're 6 inches, that's 12 yards. And if you multiply that by 3, that's 36 feet. So that's still a good amount of movement in 1 6 second in movement and attack. So you could go up to technically 12 yards in your, or not 12 yards, 24 yards in a turn. So with a raise, you get not only the 1 yard or the 2 yards that you got initially, or the 1 inch for 2 yards again, you also get 2 inches for 4 yards with a raise. And double either distance if the attacker's scale is larger than the foe's. So if a big behemoth of a monster that's twice as big as I am comes up at me and pushes me, I'm going to go back. Mind you, I am that big behemoth. My self-defense instructor reminds me of that every week because I can put my hands around him like this. He puts his hands around me like that, and he strains at it. So, character who's successfully pushed needs to make an athletics roll at a -2 if the attacker got a raise, or be knocked prone. So, there is something to be said to being in somebody's face and going, shove, shove, shove. So that's something to consider. Well, let's talk about, okay, I see my foe, one of the player characters, and I'm playing Gorknock the Goblin Guard. There you go. Nice alliteration, huh? Gorknock the Goblin Guard is going to rush at your character's bowman. Let's make it a bowman. So he doesn't even have a shield. So Gorknock the Goblin Guard runs at him. And so he ran 4 yards and he just barrels his arm down and he strikes at him. Now, our bowman has a parry of 4. And because he's only got a D4 fighting, and that gives him only a parry of 4. Because he's an archer, he's a shooter. That's what he does best. So Gorknock the Goblin Guard runs in and just nails him. He rolls an 8. So let's look at what that means. First of all, he's actually, or okay, let's say he rolls a 6. Let's say he rolls a 6. That would be a normal success, but because he ran, he gets to add +2 to his total. So now he got an 8, and that's a hit with a raise. So now Bowman Jones has to make a athletics roll at a -2, or he's going over. Butt over tea kettle. Like I said, creatures who are bigger have move their foe 2 extra inches or 4 extra feet. But normally you can't push a foe who's more than 2 sizes larger than you unless you have exceptional strength and the GM makes the call. The attacker gets to choose whether they roll athletics instead of strength. So you could do it by being able to have the knowledge of how to push on a structure. And then shields. Attackers and defenders add their shields parity bonus to their strength or athletics when strength rolls when being pushed. There we go. So if Jones the archer suddenly as Grognard the Goblin Guard is coming at him, pulls up a shield and drops his bow, he's going to get that bonus to his parry. But if Grognard the Goblin Guard has a shield on, he will actually get a bonus to his attack strength. Or he gets a bonus to his parry, I should say. Sorry. I'm just making sure that I said it right. But that's pushing. And before we leave off today, I do want to leave with ranged weapons into melee combat. So you can fire a ranged weapon in melee combat when it's you can use a firearm no larger than a pistol in melee combat. And that's something that is very true in just fighting in general. A knife is probably your closest work, and then the next tool out is a little bit further out. You can use a gun. You can use a pistol. But you can't fire long arms, rifles, and things like that into melee combat. The target number becomes the defender's parry instead of the short range as you struggle and wrestle back and forth. And when you're attacking a non-adjacent target with a ranged attack while in melee, you instantly become vulnerable. So that's something to be careful of and be aware of, because anything done against you is going to have a +2. So I've got a zombie. It's on top of me. And I've grabbed onto his shoulder. I pulled out my gun and I'm going to shoot him right here. My handgun will work, but my rifle that's on my back, I can't get it around to actually get the barrel on him. So I'm going to want my handgun. Boom, boom, boom. And it's against the zombie's parry because the zombie's like, and all over the top of me. So those are some of the new things that I wanted to bring up this week. And I apologize for not getting something out sooner. Had a really busy week. I ended up 2 days up by my offices at the base and ended up getting some really good leadership training. So I hope I'm training you on how to be a good leader. And I think leadership is going to have to be a segment of training that I do for you guys when I finish the Savage Worlds rules. So, of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me in the link below if YouTube's actually putting it out there. It's nascent.gm@gmail.com. There you go. Also, if no one's told you this today, I love you. You're amazing, and the world is a better place because you're in it. And just hold on, ride through these changes, ride through this time of your life. Because when you get out on the other side and you start getting into adulthood, you're going to be grateful that you made it there. And you're going to be grateful for the friends that you made in an Ace Role-Playing Games Club. So until next time, remember, we're gaming for good, and I'll see you then.